Hello and welcome to this week's YouTube video for week 3. We're looking at the lab here for week 3, and after completing this lab you should be familiar with writing get and set methods for a variety of classes. You should be able to implement multiple constructors for various input parameters and to be able to choose appropriate initial values. And you should be able to encapsulate object data using get and set methods. So we're going to look at the lab today. I'm going to skip down a couple of questions and get right to exercise 3, which I find quite interesting. And in this exercise, you're to create a SimpleDate class, which will store dates between the year 2000 and the current year, which in this case is 2015. And this class is going to keep track of the day, month, and year. So the first thing to do is create a new Java class called SimpleDate and complete the class with some attributes. And we have to use the appropriate accessor modifiers. So we go into our Eclipse IDE and create a new Java project. We call it a lab 3. It's open here, and then we create a new class which we might want to call SimpleDate class like that, and here we have open the SimpleDate class. Now the question is to create attributes day, month, and year. So here we have int day, int month, and int year, and the appropriate accessor modifiers in this case is private. We want to keep these this data secure as follows. So the next step is really to write get methods for each attribute, and we follow the structure of the get method. So for each attribute we have public int get day with no input parameters, and that just returns this dot day. Public int get month, which returns this dot month like that, and you guessed it, public int get year, which returns this dot year. So here we have it. So we have some private object attributes, and each of them have a get method. So now let's try to create a SimpleDate class. Well, we can't really do it yet. If we try to create SimpleDate test program, then of course we can create this SimpleDate date is equal to new SimpleDate like that. Now if we debug this, have a look, then stepping through, we have a date object, and it has day, month, year, all initialized to 0, of course. But you might have noticed that we have some access modifiers on our code, on our attributes here, which means that we can't access those. So for instance, if I try to write a date dot, well, day, of course I can't access that. It's not allowed. I can get the value of the day, but I can't actually change it. So let's go back and try to write some set methods, and those will set the value of each attribute. Now, according to the to the exercise is that we can only set the instance variables or the object attributes to certain values. So the day can only be set to a value between 1 and 31. The month between 1 and 12, and a year is a value between 2000 and 2015, the current year. If these conditions are not met by the set modifier method's input parameters, then we have to choose an appropriate default value to set the instance variables to instead. So let's try that now. Let's say if we write public void set day, and we give it a day, then the set method would look like this. If day is greater than 0 and day is less than or equal to 31, maybe we want to make this a little bit more symmetric like that, and putting a bracket around there, then that is fine. We can say this dot day is equal to day. Otherwise, this dot day is equal to 1, let's say. So this is our set method where when the value is valid between 1 and 31, that's a valid day for a month, then we set the value of the object attribute to that day parameter. Otherwise, we set the object attribute to the value 1. And I've chosen 1 as an initial value. We certainly can't have 0 because 0 is not a valid day. Let's try this now for month. It's really the same structure. You can almost cut and paste it. Public void set month int month. So again, if month is greater than or equal to 1 and month is less than or equal to, well, what should it be? It should be 12. And putting brackets around that condition, then this dot month is equal to month, else this dot month is equal to 1. And lastly, year, we can compute that as follows. Public void set year, and giving a year as an input parameter. This year is greater than or equal to 2000, and this year is less than or equal to 2015, then again, this dot year is equal to year. Otherwise, this dot year is equal to 2015, just like that. Whoops. Done. So let's try it out. A date dot set day, say 11, set month maybe 12, and set year is equal to 2015. Then we can print out a date dot get day plus a date dot get month plus a date dot get year. So if we run that, quite predictably we get the day, month, year in a nice format as we expected. So one thing we also can do is write a method just called setDate and give an input parameters a day, a month, a year, and that sets the instance variables using the set methods we've written. So we can do it not just one by one, but we could do it all at once. So let's try that. So all we do is maybe here we have a public void set date method. Int is going to be day, month, year. Then this dot day is equal to day. This dot set day is going to be equal to day. This dot set month is going to be equal to month, setting that value to month. And this dot set, set year, we give it an input parameter of year, and that will call each one of these set methods that we wrote up here. I'm going to collapse some of the code so you can see all of it. It's mostly the same. So the good thing is that it does actually check if the day, month, and year are valid. We don't have to rewrite that code. So we could also say, instead of all of this, we might instead say a date dot set date is going to be 11/12/2015, and then we have something very similar but maybe with less code. Of course, the most useful bit would be to define a constructor with a method signature that takes a day, month, year, and we then can use we can just construct the date automatically. So up here we would just instead say 12/2015. That would be very convenient, and actually that's quite easy to do. So we can create that constructor just like this: public SimpleDate, int day, int month, int year, and it's just simply a matter of calling this dot set date. And of course, luckily Eclipse fills in all of this, all of these parameters, and then I can get rid of that. And here I have just the SimpleDate constructed, and we get the same output. I just ran it there. All right, what next? Choose some simple appropriate initial values for the SimpleDate attributes and use these values to write the default constructor. Well, that's quite interesting. So what we have to do is the default constructor, if you remember, is also called the zero parameter constructor, which takes 0 parameters, just like that. Whenever we created this constructor here, then we actually don't have a default constructor and we have to write one ourselves. Now what we can do is just simply use this method again, this.setDate, to the initial values, which we agreed that would be 1, 1, and 2000. But slightly more interesting would be the use of the this keyword. So what this does is call the constructor with the matching input parameters. Remember, the method signature is what Java uses to uniquely identify a method, and the method of of inputting 3 integers and having the name SimpleDate is this here. So we use this keyword to call this constructor here. So let's see if it actually works. And in fact, I'll set a breakpoint so we can step through the code and see for ourselves. So let's get rid of this, and let's get rid of this code here. We don't need that anymore. So we have a breakpoint set here, and if we run debug and step through it, F5, F5, then this calls SimpleDate. That's a default constructor, and the next instruction to execute is this. So, and the input is 1, 1, 2000. So if I step into this by pressing F5 or by going to the button up here, then you'll see that actually I called this constructor right beneath it. So, and this of course calls the setDate method here, which calls our set methods that appropriately set the variables for the object. And so at the end of it here, I have a new object, a date, and it has day, month, year, which are the default values that I chose. And as usual, it prints it out. The last exercise I'll do is exercise 4. Write a string toString method which returns a string of the form date, month, year. To construct this string, use the string concatenation plus to form the required output. Well, actually this is quite easy because I've been doing this all along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut and paste this here and put it into my method, SimpleDate. So the method signature for a toString is public string toString, no input parameters, and I'm going to return a value. So the value that I return is going to be a string, and it looks like this. Now, a date is not an object here. That doesn't make sense. We actually use the current object, which is this. So I return this string of getDay followed by a forward slash concatenated with these pluses to getMonth, concatenated with the forward slash concatenated to this dot getYear. So if I run this, I can just output a date object, and it looks like this. All right, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the lab.